The dogs in this neighborhood have absolutely no respect for my filming schedule. Outrageous. Hey there, book friends. What is up? What's going on? How are you? I'm Addie, and this is Books and Tea Time. If you haven't been here before, welcome. If you have, welcome back. Glad to have you. Today is going to be my summer wrap-up. Before we get into it, I have a question for you all. As you probably noticed, I do my wrap-ups seasonally based on the 4 seasons of the year, but I have noticed that they've been getting a little long, these videos, and I haven't even recorded this one yet, but I'm sure it's gonna be long. So my question is, would you guys prefer if I did monthly wrap-up videos where I just talk about like the books I read in September, and then October I do one, etc., like most people typically do it? Or do you like having these longer chunky videos at the end of every season and talking about like 3 months worth of books? Please let me know in the comments, because I've been doing it like this, but I feel like it's kind of a disservice to the books that I read like at the beginning of the period that I'm talking about, because I kind of forget some stuff. But anyway, this one is going to be a seasonal one. So we've got 19 books to talk about that I've read from like the beginning of June all the way to the end of August. I have my like 6 pages of notes here, and I also have water. So let's get hydrated together and talk about some books. Cheers. Clink. So the very first book that I have on this list is actually a novella, and it's part of a larger series, which is the Montague Siblings series by Mackenzie Lee. And the first book is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. It's like a historical fiction / historical fantasy. So I read the novella between book 1 and book 2, which is The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky. It's like 90 pages. I found it on Scribd, and I was really interested in reading it because I hadn't been able to find it anywhere, because it was kind of like an exclusive thing that you got in this particular edition. So I read it and I liked it. It was fast and fun, and then done. You know, it's a cute little addition to the story, especially if you really like Monty, who's the main character. In the first book, he falls for his best friend Percy, and they have like this cute like will they won't they thing going on for some of the book, and like dealing with what it means to be queer at this time and in this historical setting, and to be like these wealthy children of like lords and ladies and society. So like there's a lot of action and adventure in the first book as well, but this novella is kind of about Percy and Monty right after the first book, and it's basically centering on their journey of like intimacy and transitioning from friends to lovers, basically, and how that is going to work for them, and them kind of playing around with that, and the people in their lives helping to like set the mood and the tone. It was nice to get more of them, but it's nothing crazy. I gave it 3 stars because it does what it's supposed to do, in my opinion, as a novella, but like you don't need it by any means to read the other books, and I don't think you should be like stressed out or upset if you can't get your hands on it. But if you have Scribd and you have some other way to read it, it's nice. If you like male romance stories, YA, historical fantasy and fiction, pirates, adventures, definitely check out the Montague Siblings series. Number 2, we're actually going to talk about a series of graphic novels, volumes 1 through 12. I read all available volumes of the Avant-Guards. I can't remember the author's name, but I'll have an image of all of these titles. But this is a really awesome and sweet graphic novel series about a club college basketball team that exists within a school that is primarily oriented toward the arts, which is why their name is the Avant-Guards. Very clever, very cute. It's a really fun, great graphic novel series. It's very bingeable. I read like all of the volumes, I think, in like 2 days. They're amazing. The art style is really cool. We've got a variety of characters under the LGBTQIA2S+ umbrella. Specifically, our main 2 characters kind of are in a female romance, and they've got a lot of like cute banter, but like there's also the trying to be part of a team on a basketball team, and like will their relationship affect that, and should they or should they not be in a relationship because of that, so there's like some of that going on, which is fun. It was a really cool representation of college life, I think, and like the balance of clubs and sports and academia, and like how that puts strain on individual characters and their own personal stories. So that was really cool to see. I also really love how the artist specifically draws like the scenes of basketball happening. Like obviously it's not like a video, but like they present the movement and flow and fast-paced part of basketball very well on page. I ended up giving it a 4-star because there were some elements of it that felt a little more YA and less new adult to me for something that's about college life and college students. But overall, I thought it was really, really good. I highly recommend it if you like sports, college sports romance stuff, specifically anything relating to basketball in particular, sapphic love stories, and if you're really into graphic novels, I think this is a great time. Super fun. Highly recommend it. Now we're into the first book I have a physical copy of, and it is one of, if not my most anticipated book of the year, and that is Sorrowland by River Solomon. I have a whole vlog where I talk about this that I'll have a link to. I annotated the crap out of it, and I loved it. River Solomon is an auto-buy author for me. I have heard that some people have issues with the pacing and plot stuff in this book, and I definitely see that, but overall it didn't really bother me because I feel like my experience of the story wasn't really hindered by that, but it is something that I want to point out. It's a great fantasy, horror, literary fiction, speculative fiction mix, this really unique mixture of all those genres to create such a wonderful piece of writing. There are content warnings included in the front, which I love. I really want to support and shout out all the authors that do that because I think that should be normalized, to have a page in the front before the story starts listing all of those for readers so that they can access them easily. There's insights into religion, economy, environmentalism, and environmental issues, while also having commentary on racism, specifically issues that the Black community and Indigenous communities face in and around where this book takes place. Scientific racism and medical abuse of Black bodies is also part of this book, so just be aware of that. It's horrifying and dangerously enchanting. I feel like calling this book enchanting it's not the word that I want, but I feel like it's the only word that I can think of. It's got this enchanting quality, but a very dark enchanting quality. It's not fairy tale, it's not storybook, but it twists you up inside when you're reading it, and it just like envelopes you into this world and just throws you around different ways, and it's like you are stuck in this forest and wandering everywhere, and it's just, oh, it's so good. I'm sorry if I'm leaving too many plot details out. I feel like this video will be too long if I summarize all of these books, but I will just say quickly that this book is about our main character Vern, who escapes a commune or a cult, depending on who you ask, gives birth to twins in the woods, and then a bunch of wild stuff happens. But you don't really need to know anything other than it's authored by River Solomon and you should read it. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Really loved it. I would highly recommend it if you like horror and suspense. And also, this is kind of a weird thing, but if you like The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey, I think you would like this because there are some similarities. This is not a zombie book, but there are other similarities in these really strange ways that I think that if you like that book, you would like this book. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. You should read it. Next, we have another graphic novel series, or another set of graphic novels, and I read volumes 1 through 4 of Heavy Vinyl. I also don't know the author for that one because I read it on Scribd. My apologies. This is a really cute graphic novel about music in like the 80s and 90s and this record shop with a secret underground group of girls that fight crime, and it's really just, it's a fun time. Nothing crazy, but I still enjoyed it. And if you're looking for a graphic novel series, especially one that has a sapphic love story as part of the component, it's not a main plot thread, but it's definitely there. If you're interested in that, definitely check this out because I think you would like it. I did bump it down. I originally gave it 4 stars, but I think I'm gonna bump it down to a 3-star just because I haven't really thought about it at all since reading it, whereas the Avant-Guards, I'm constantly thinking about recommending it to people when I hear them talking about other graphic novel series and like sports romances and stuff. If you like Paper Girls, I think you would like this. Definitely worth checking out. The next book on this list is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I listened to the audiobook for this one as well because I fell deeply and passionately in love with Casey McQuiston's debut novel, Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's incredible. I gushed about it in my last wrap-up video for the spring. If you want to see me literally freaking out about it, I'll have it linked up there. I do have a vlog where I talk a little bit more in detail about this in, I believe, my vacation reading vlog. Again, up here and down there in the description box if you're interested. The premise of this book is really cool. The idea of someone being trapped in this like time travel situation on a subway and being trapped there but being from decades and decades prior and like figuring out how that works and like falling in love with someone in the present. It's a good idea and it's an interesting premise, but in my opinion, I went into this expecting a romance, and I feel like it's more new adult contemporary, and I don't really read a lot of contemporary, and even when I do read romance, I'm a little more picky about it because I don't read a lot of it, and I have a specific taste and specific things that I like. So I think the subway trap thing is at odds with the book itself, and I think that it makes the romance element of this difficult, and there's like a tension between those two, and I felt like that really, it caused some problems for me with the book. Great representation. We have trans characters, we have a drag artist in the novel. Our main character August is bisexual. I like how there's like a detective-ish mystery component where August is trying to figure out what's going on with Jane, who's stuck on the subway and probably from like the 50s or something. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It's still a good book, but it's not my cup of tea. So if you like contemporary, new adult fiction, romance stories that aren't as heavy or steamy, and if you want a sapphic love story, this is right up your alley. Next, we have another incredibly highly anticipated book, The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevo. I read Nevo's 2 novellas at the beginning of the year, kind of, I think in March maybe, and I loved them. They were incredible. I gave them both 5 out of 5 stars. I do have a video where I talk about this book in a little more detail, so I'll have that linked up above if you're interested. I read it around the same time as I read Sorrowland, so these are actually in the same video. Very simply, to break this down, the writing is excellent. It is superb. It is so enchanting. It's got a storybook-esque quality to it. Nevo has such elegant melodic writing style. It flows so beautifully. However, this is a Great Gatsby retelling, and I don't like the Great Gatsby. And in my opinion, there's too much of that original Great Gatsby story and not enough of Jordan, because this is from Jordan Baker's perspective. She is the Gulf star who is like kind of in a relationship with Nick in the first book. And in this book, it takes place from her perspective. She is a Vietnamese American woman who has been raised by an American family who basically like took her or adopted her. I wanted more of Jordan's story, and there's also a really fascinating element of like magic and paper magic specifically in this book, and there's just not enough of it. And I think that a lot of people also have that opinion, and that's all I'll really say about it. I still love Nevo. I will still auto buy anything that she writes, and I'm glad that I read it, but honestly, I don't care enough about Great Gatsby. I really don't. It's not my jam. So if you love The Great Gatsby, definitely pick this up. Check it out. I think you'd like it a lot. If you like retellings of classic stories, if you like this book, if you've already read it and you haven't read her novellas, definitely check those out. They're incredible. Okay, next up, there are 2 books on this list that are definitely top contenders for one of my favorites of the year. And the first book of the bunch is the next book we're going to talk about, which is Milk Fed. This book it's spectacular. This book is so unique and so special. Essentially, this is about a young Jewish woman who is struggling with body image and with food and her relationship with food and diet and weight loss because of specifically her relationship with her mother and the comments that were made to her about weight and beauty standards and body image and things like that. and she is kind of encouraged by her therapist to go on a hiatus from her mother, and while she's on that hiatus of talking to her mother, she meets another Jewish woman who embraces her beauty and challenges fat phobia and encourages our main character to experience food in an unrestricted way and see like what that reveals about her and about their relationship and about her own relationship with herself. This book is unfiltered, unapologetic glory. It makes you uncomfortable and it pushes you and it challenges you. It challenges society's expectations of beauty standards and it challenges fat phobia and diet culture and all of that, but in a very messy way. And there's like all these messy, tense, complicated moments between our main character and her relationship with food and her relationship with other people and how that connects to food and the relationship between food and other desires and other forms of pleasure. It's also definitely a bit heartbreaking and difficult to read at times. I would look up trigger warnings before you dive into this. I can say personally, as someone who deals with my own issues of beauty standards and body image and body dysmorphia, etc., that it is hard to read this book. However, it was strangely therapeutic to me in a way, and I still think about this book regularly, and I really want to reread it. It's excellent. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I really can't imagine that it won't make my top books of the year. Highly recommend it. If you are at all interested, I think you should pick it up. Next up, we have Beach Read by Emily Henry, another audio that I listened to, and I read this right after coming back from vacation, which I think was the perfect time to read it. Although this doesn't really take place on a beach, it takes place on Lake Michigan. I feel like that's important to point out. They're not actually on a beach. I mean, there's like sand and stuff on the lake, but it's not a beach. For me, I don't care, but to me that was just like a little bit of a pet peeve moment. I was like, okay, but they're not at the beach. This is like an enemies to lovers romance about two authors who basically switch genres to mix things up and fight against their writer's block, and it turns into like this competition, like, oh, don't fall in love with me while we spend all this time together thing. I really love reading books, about authors, about writing. I think it's really interesting. It's a really nice, steamy enemies to lovers romance. There's also some really deep discussions about loss and family confrontation. It's not my absolute favorite romance, but I definitely recommend it. I think the writing is pretty good, and I like the story a lot. I like our main characters a lot. I originally gave this a 4.5, but I think I'm actually gonna bump it down to a 4 because I've read romances since then that I think are better than this or that I enjoyed more. If you like enemies to lovers, books about books, finding yourself after loss or after confrontation or a life challenge. After that, I read Outlawed by Anna North, which is like a female Western inspired story that was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I will say this book starts out really, really strong in my opinion. Like the first 3 chapters are really good. After that, the pacing and the ending kind of are uneven and a little rocky, which does disturb the book a little bit to me, but it doesn't make the book bad by any means. I was surprised and a little bit confused with some of the decisions and roads that the author took, but it's still a good book. I still enjoyed it and I still recommend it. Specifically, some things that I absolutely loved about this book are the discussions about women's bodies and women's reproductive health at this time period in like the late 1800s in America, and how our main character, Ada, so desperately wants to study and learn about women's reproductive health and the female body to help and to also protect women from accusations of witchcraft and things of that nature when it comes to miscarriages and barrenness and all of that. And it's beautiful to see how badly Ada wants to find someone who can help her learn about this and to learn from hands-on experience as the daughter of a midwife how to help other women around her and also how to protect them from like that mob mentality, like witch trial-esque environment. I really like the Outlaws. They're led by a non-binary individual, which I think is really cool. There are also a lot of female characters in the Outlaw group who also experienced barrenness or miscarriages or were exiled from their community kind of by force, some having to flee for their life for similar reasons as Ada is, and it's very heartbreaking, but there's also that like found family aspect to it, and they build this place where they feel safe. If you really like Western stuff, I think that you would like this. Historical fiction, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I just wish that it was maybe a little longer. That's really my only complaint. After that, in the same video actually that I read Outlawed, I read Witches, Sluts, and Feminists by Christian J. Solier. So I do have a vlog with more details and a more in-depth discussion of my thoughts on this book. Milo is freaking out because there's a dog walking down the street. If you can hear that, that's what it is. This book is a nice, brief, fast, quick overview of the interactions in history and the present between the terms witch, slut, and feminist, and how women who are associated with those words either by choice or by other people are both hindered but also empowered by those words, and how those words change over time by like reclaiming the term. And it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's a good intro for further inquiry. If you like witchy stuff, if you like feminist scholarship, I think that you would like it. I mean, it's short and cool, and there are definitely some things in here that I want to look into further, and it's a nice touch point for finding those things that I wanted to look into. There's some illustrations, some interviews with other people, so I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. Next, we have Finlay Donovan is Killing It, which for the longest time, I thought the title of this book was Finally, Donovan is Killing It. But that's not it. Our main character's name is Finlay, her last name is Donovan, and she's killing it. So just thought I'd point that out in case anybody else is an idiot like I am. This is another fun, fast mystery that I liked but wasn't blown away by. You know, it's just like, it's a lot of middle of the road books here that aren't bad but that aren't gonna stick with me forever, you know? I also am not like a mystery buff. I don't read a lot of mystery, so maybe that's part of it. If you really like mystery, check this out, read it, enjoy it. It's about a woman who, again, is an author, which is interesting for me. That's one of the reasons why I liked this book. She's an author of mystery thriller books, and someone overhears her talking with her agent and thinks that she is actually a hit woman, and that woman hires her to kill her husband, who's a really bad dude. And he does die, but Finlay doesn't actually kill him on purpose, so there's like this whole miscommunication and then like hiding the body situation. I liked the story. The tone and the pacing aren't exactly consistent or strong, but I'm not super bothered by that. Overall, I just think it was fun. It was fun and done, you know? One thing that I will say, I really like and appreciate that Finlay, as a recently divorced woman, a single mother, a struggling artist and author, is allowed to be messy, and she gets friendship and love from her family, her partner or her new love interest, who I won't say or won't disclose, and her children. She receives love and recognition from her family, even though she's in this difficult time and she's going through this messy period. She's allowed to be chaotic and be messy. If you like thrillers and mysteries with a lighthearted, humorous aspect to them. Next, I read another nonfiction, which was Hood Feminism. I have actually been reading this for like 4 months, and I finally finished it. I really like to take my time with a lot of the nonfiction that I read, especially longer nonfiction, and especially books about anti-racist practice, because I want to make sure that I'm learning as much as I can and getting enough out of it that I can remember and then use this insight and this perspective and this advice from Mickey Kendall and translating that into action in my real life. So I like to take my time with it, although I did really take my time with it. Like, I've been reading this since I think March. This is very informative, very illuminating. Mickey Kendall does a wonderful job of structuring this book so that it highlights and centers the issues and the communities and the groups of people that white and mainstream feminism excludes or kind of doesn't acknowledge as part of feminism, and she explains why it is a feminist issue and the things that you can do. It's a call to action, which I really love because it allows me to find actionable things to do. And while I love reading and I love educating myself, it's got to be more than that, and I know that. So reading books like this that have things in them and advice in them and things that you can take, and not only information that you can take and use and share with your friends and your family and your loved ones, etc., to help discuss this and get the conversations going about how you and your personal group of people can fight for a feminism that is more inclusive and does more for people that aren't white cis women. It is a must read, a 5 out of 5 stars for me. Read it. There's no if you like, it's just read it. After that, I read Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire, which is the first in a series of stories that are like kind of connected but also not really strung along by plot, from what I understand. It's basically you follow a bunch of different kids who go through these doors to other worlds that are personalized for them, and a bunch of other crazy stuff happens. But in this one, we're at like this orphanage kind of place for kids who went to a different world and then came back and can't readjust to their real world again. Liked this story, but it's too much going on for such a short book. The audiobook I think was like 3 hours, and it's really intriguing and the premise is great and I like a lot of the stuff that's going on, but to me there's way too many moving parts in this first book that for the length that it is. Like, we've got kids from other worlds and their pasts that we know little to nothing about from those worlds. Our main character has just recently come out of like the Hall of the Undead or whatever, and we get some insights into her experience there, but by and large all of these kids came from a place that we really don't know anything about. And then there's like this murder mystery element in this house with this woman who's running the house, and information about her and her past being thrown in there, and why are these kids being murdered, and the murder mystery element, the relationships between the kids. It's too much for me. But at the same time, I like the premise. I specifically really loved Jack. I think her character is amazing, and I know that the second book follows her and her twin sister, Jill. They're Jack and Jill. So I definitely am going to continue on with the series, at least to read the second one and see how I feel after that, but this first one was just a lot. However, I would love to say that we do have a trans character and an aromantic character, and I think that's really wonderful and great representation for having a book with young children that identify as aromantic and identify as trans. I think it's just empowering and encouraging to young children who are, you know, part of the LGBTQIA++ community, whether they're ready to come out or they're not. I think it's great representation and I love to see it. I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I'm interested to read the next one, but it was a little too fast for me. That's all I'll say. A little too much, a little too quick. If you like short books though, and if you like plot versus like in-depth character studies, I think that you would like this. If you like really creepy, like Stranger Things kind of Addams Family vibes, I think you would like it. So yeah. After that, I was in a really bad reading slump, and I have a whole vlog dedicated to me breaking that reading slump by reading The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. This is about a bunch of white ladies in the South in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and a vampire comes to their town, and then they gotta just band together to fight him off because the men in their life are stupid and befriend this vampire dude, and he preys on the children around this town. This was great for getting out of a reading slump. It's paced so well, and it takes place across like I think 2 decades, but the pacing and how the author approaches time is really, really well done. I was very impressed by that. Creepy, it's gross as hell, it's gory and very disturbing at times, definitely horror for sure. There's a lot of bug stuff that happens. If bugs or rats freak you out, I would think twice about reading this book. But at the same time, I thought it was really well done, and even though it grossed me out and creeped me out and disrupted my sleep, I'm glad that I read it. It's a cool take on the vampire legend, and it's an excellent like study of the suburban South in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and specifically like white suburban culture, or like it's just an interesting, like, almost case study. I wasn't super comfy with some of the portrayals of race. I want to find some Own Voices reviews. I haven't really been able to find too many, but I want to find some Own Voices reviews from Black individuals who've read this book and see how they feel about the portrayal of race, because, I don't know, something about it just makes me a little uncomfy, and I feel like if my gut is telling me that, maybe there's more to it, so definitely be aware going in. Specifically, there's just a scene where I feel like the author has an opportunity to touch on and acknowledge police violence against Black bodies and doesn't, and that really rubs me the wrong way. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars for that reason, and if I find it to be more problematic than I even originally planned, I will always be willing to revisit that rating. So if you've read this book, give me your opinions in the comments below. If you like horror, if you like really gory stuff, if you like vampires. Okay, after that, I was back on my reading grind, everybody, and I read 3 books in a row all about mythology for my Mythological Babes video. I am really proud of that vlog series. I'm going to start reading and doing vlog series all about mythology, and the first one was themed along Mythological Babes, so I'll have a link to that. And all of the 3 books I'm about to talk about, I dive in great detail in that video if you want a little more and you feel like I'm not giving you enough. But the first book that I read is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. I love mythology, obviously, and I love a good retelling, and this is a good retelling. Really good writing and a unique perspective to offer, specifically the discussion of how the follies of men that enrage the gods basically end up punishing and harming women in their lives, and how women are attacked and have to constantly be battling against gods and goddesses and also against the men in their world, the mortal men in their world, to fight for freedom and acknowledgement and for safety and for their lives. And I think that that is a really wonderful thread that Jennifer Saint follows, and a very rich and detailed argument that she engaged in. For a long time I thought this was a 3-star, but I loved the ending. I didn't really know what was gonna happen because I don't know about Ariadne after she leaves Crete and after she helps Theseus defeat the Minotaur, so a lot of this book was a surprise to me, and the ending specifically was a huge surprise. So I ended up bumping it up to a 4 out of 5 stars. If you like mythological retellings, if you like Greek and Roman mythology, books about dancing, there's some dancing threads in here. This is the other book that I think is going to almost 100% make it to my best books of the year. It is so good. Literally, Milk Fed is really good, but this book touched my soul and my heart in a way that I don't think a book has ever done before. And that is The Girl and the Goddess by Nikita Gill. This is a fiction story told through a series of poems and short stories. There's a bunch of illustration, and it is a coming-of-age story following our main character Paro, who grows up in India and is born in Pakistan, and then because of partition ends up having to leave with her family. It's broken up into 3 sections where you follow her childhood, her teenage years, and her adulthood, and it is just beautiful. Again, I have much more in-depth gushing discussion in my vlog, but I think that the way the author tells the story through poems it serves the story so well, and it is the perfect way to tell the story. I was just so pleasantly surprised. I don't read a lot of poetry, so I was very pleasantly surprised with how much I loved this and how wonderful and perfect it ended up being. And there are content warnings at the front. Again, love to see it. It's perfection. It is divine, pun intended. Read it. Read it. Please read it. If you like fiction that is told in verse, if you like poetry in general, myth and divinity, coming of age stories, and stories about resilience, self-discovery, and like enlightenment, you gotta do it. You gotta read it, everybody. Figure it out. Find a way to get your hands on it, because you will not regret it. The last book that I read for my Mythological Babes vlog is 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. Another excellent, well-crafted retelling of the Trojan War, right after and during the Trojan War, but it's told from the perspective of a variety of women. It's a chronicle of how the war started, what happened during the war, and what happens after to the women who survived the fall of Troy. And it's also told through the perspective of women on the side of Troy and on the side of Greece, and people in the middle, people who cause it, gods and goddesses who cause the war, etc. The way this is told through so many varied perspectives, again, serves this story in the way that it's told, and the arguments that Haynes is making so well, and the purpose of her retelling so well. It effectively reveals so much of the heroism of women, and how even though that looks different perhaps than the heroism of men, it is still heroic and still worthy of being written about and being epic in the sense of like the Odyssey and the Iliad, but also recognizing that the deaths of women and discussing the death of women, whether it is the actual death or the social death that a lot of the Trojan women face after being enslaved following the fall of Troy by a lot of the Greek lords, those deaths must be talked about as well, and they're just as important, and even more so perhaps important when they are purposefully ignored for the gruesome and horrifying parts of it. And it was really beautiful, really well done. I wasn't super impressed with Penelope's perspective and Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena's chapters. I had some issues with them. I highlighted them more in the vlog if you want to talk about that, but overall I thought it was really well done, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Again, if you like retellings, Greek myth, Greek epics, multi-POV stories, it's for you. Okay everybody, we're almost there. We only have 2 books left, and they're both audiobooks, and they're both romances, and they're both part of the same series. So I found this book on Likewise, actually, which is an app that I just downloaded, and I started it on a whim, and it ended up being, I think, one of my favorite romances. It's up there with Red, White, and Royal Blue now. It is such an excellent romance, and that is Only When It's Us by Chloe Leese. This is a sports romance, enemies to lovers, but it's also so much more than that. That's what I really love and look for in certain romances, is that there are those romance qualities. There's the banter, there's the steaminess, there's like the tension, but I also like when there's more, when there's other depth to it that make it also reality kind of, and they ground the romance to reality a lot. This book made me ugly cry in like the middle of the night while I was listening to it. I bawled my eyes out. It's just so moving because it has so much to offer. First of all, one of our main character, the male love interest, is partially deaf. He became partially deaf after an illness that he had. There are other representations of disability and of neurodiversity in the book, which I really love. You've got the enemies to lovers trope. You've got discussions of grief and loss that are incredibly painful and moving, but also so well done and beautiful, and the way that it arcs throughout the story all the way to the end is really well done. You've got the disability representation of neurodiversity, great banter, steaminess that is just it's a slow burn kind of a steam though. You got like the slow burn element to the romance. There's the sport element to it. It takes place on a college campus, and like college life, you don't get a lot of college books in general, I feel like, but also like college romance. It was really nice having just graduated from college. I thought that was really well done. There's like this matchmaking element to it that makes it really exciting. A big family for one of the main characters, the found family element. It's got so much. It's so good. Please read it. Whether you like romance or you're iffy about romance, I really just do it. Please do it. This is honestly another contender for the top of the year, although I just feel like I have at this point so many books. I don't know how I'm going to narrow it down, but it's excellent. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. If you like sports romance, if you like Red, White, and Royal Blue, if you like enemies to lovers, great banter, and if you're looking for a book that will make you ugly cry, I can guarantee this will. Hydration. Now let's get to the last book, which is the second book in the series. It's called the Bergman Brothers series because the male love interest in Only When It's Us has 7 siblings. Or maybe he's one of 7. And so the second book is about one of his brothers, Ren, and he is a hockey player, and he has secretly been pining for one of the people who works as like a social media person for his hockey team, and her name is Frankie. And they've both kind of secretly liked each other a lot, and then like a bunch of different events kind of throw them together, and they have like this forbidden love and then this like secret dating trope romance thing going on. This is also an own voices story from our author Chloe Leese, because our main character Frankie not only has rheumatoid arthritis, but she also is on the autism spectrum, and Chloe Leese is autistic, and she puts that on her Instagram page and talks about how she really wants to put own voices romances out there that discuss autism and autism representation and the spectrum. There are other characters as well on the spectrum in this book, and I think it's really well done how the author recognizes the differences and how everybody's experience is individual. It's a really good romance. It's got like a similar style to Only When It's Us. It doesn't pack quite as much of a punch as Only When It's Us did for me. I still really liked it, but I don't think it's as good, in my opinion. There's not all of that other stuff. There's some other stuff going on. Did I even tell you what the second book was called? I don't think I did. The second book is called Always Only You. And I gave it a 4-star because it's good, but not as good as the first one. I do love the hockey element as someone who really loves watching hockey. So if you like hockey, check it out. If you like Forbidden Love, check it out. Okay, that wraps up this video. My throat is sore from talking so long. This video is going to be ages. Don't forget to let me know if you want seasonal or monthly wrap-ups from here on out. And please let me know if you read any of these books, if you liked any of these books, what are you reading? Let's chat. What's going on in your life? Give me the 411. Thank you so much for watching this video and stopping by my channel. It means the world to me. I love you all. Hope you're having a great time. Happy September, now that we're officially in September. WTF, am I right? Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if that's your jam, and I hope to see you in my next video. Happy reading, happy writing, and happy living. Bye!